All right, we're live. Hey everyone, this is the second video in the series that I'm making called Elus Coen Reintegration of the Mind. This video is going to be a talk about the book Seven Seals of Serge Callier, and in it, there's some footnotes that are referencing some pretty amazing stuff in the lessons of Leon. So I got so tired of digging and digging and digging. Finally, we have enough primary sources, which you can view in the last video about, that we are able to finally have a discussion about this group and what they did. So I have Google translated. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. The entire book, Seven Seals of the Elus Coen. And now I am going to go over a brief overview because it's a pretty big book. It talks about documents. The footnotes in this book are amazing. So you'll really want to pay attention to those. But I don't really want to do an hour-long presentation on the actual material. Just want to go over a brief overview of what we got here. So he goes over every one of the degrees, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about them. Fortunately, I have the catechisms. I have lots and lots of stuff that we can have a chat about. So he says that based on the lessons of Leon, that the blue grades, this is called the blue band of the porch class, was given on a Monday, the day of the moon. Some people have said it's new moon, some people say it's full moon, but it definitely has a moon correspondence. I can give a whole bunch of references to any of this. I'm not just making stuff up. This is out of his footnote in the Seven Seals, and it references the lessons of Leon, which we have. And you will see throughout this book there is high reliance on the lessons of Leon. But I'm not going to go into rah lessons of Leon. It's just an amazing thing that we can now look at stuff like this. Uh, so the first thing is in this talk he gives, which was originally from Renaissance Traditionnelle. Serge Callier actually wrote a book in French and included some pieces which were not in the original Renaissance Traditionnelle volumes that these books were derived from. So this is all new material, and including a conclusion and a chapter on the women in the Elus Coen. Really, really good stuff. And I can only go over a little bit of it. And I will quote him from Google Translate. So it's not necessarily a quote. I don't speak French. There could be a little bit off, but I got to assure you it's pretty good. So moving into this book, it talks about the first degree and basically what happens in the first degree. Um, in the first degree of Symbolic Apprentice, what happens is he talks about first the statutes. That a member of this group had to have specific qualities. You know, you'll hear a lot about how I believe it was Napoleon that was not allowed into the mysteries, or it could be. I know it was Caligula, but there was definitely some requirements to go into initiatic and mystery schools. There might be a Napoleonic system out there if you want to research it. So so basically what happened is in the general statutes, which I don't have, but Serge so wonderfully gives us a snippet of what they are. He talks about how something that's really important. He says that where does he say it? I'm going to generally summarize it and then I'll quote it. But basically, what he says is that part of the general statutes of the Elus Coen were that they don't care about your standing in the world, your economic status, your marital status, anything like that. That Martinez was not interested in any kind of advantageous position of the members that were being admitted to these grades. He didn't care. In fact, what he really wanted was fidelity to the process itself. So he gives in one of these pages that they don't really care about their standing in the outside world. What they really care about is a sincere heart. So that kind of goes to show you where these guys were at. Now, in Michel Nahon's book, which you can go read, it talks about how Martinez was interested in turning the Masonic milieu at his time into a sort of, how would you say it? Not monasticism, but definitely give Masonry a higher Christian and a higher religious, spiritual component. Because Masonry was turning a lot into the Enlightenment period, which Saint Martin railed about, and they were going more into whatever man can do with reason, he will therefore be able to construct a world that's more comfortable and meet his needs. And we know from social science that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So a mind that's constantly focused on its own reason is divided. And this is pretty much what Martinez was saying. In the first degree, he goes through, they go through a ritual. I can't, you got to read it. But he goes through a ritual with that very much resembles the ceremonial story of Genesis. How some details are given here, where the 6 thoughts of the divine are actually the 6 days of creation. They go into that in this book. You can read it, available to you. That the 6 divine thoughts were the 6 days of creation. So, and then they have diagrams that they use to kind of carry out this ceremonial aspect of Genesis. In the beginning, man was emanated, all that kind of stuff. So they talk about, in here, they talk about all kinds of stuff. You can read it. I don't really want to go through it, but they say that his words, placed in the center of 6 circumferences, forming long squares and perfect squares, deprived of the use of bodily senses, the candidate is raised. There's some things that are done, and basically, Martinez wanted this degree to be a birth of the individual's ability to start experiencing this spiritual religio truth that unfortunately was opposed to the Enlightenment period. I don't want to go through all of this. I just wanted to give a general overview of the degree. So in the process of being put into this ceremonial act of the book of Genesis, Martinez at this time would have some special actions that were done to the candidate. Now, this book really, really brings it out, and also Saint Martin in 10 Instructions talks about how, and you could go buy it if you want. 10 Instructions says that basically the spirits of the central fire axis, okay, you got to know that term, were coming out to assist the individual in reintegrating their chaos. That they actually were chaotic even though they were ordered, and that the spirits of central fire axis would come through and start to organize the chaos. Even though it was in order, it would give differentiation to the chaotic elements of the salt, the sulfur, and the mercury. So Saint Martin goes through that for about 5 lessons and 10 instructions. And I said it before, but it's super important to realize that the 10 instructions were not a syllabus to those who were looking to be initiated into the Elus Coen. They had already gone through this. So by the time they heard the lessons audibly by the 10 instructions, they knew some stuff. They knew about a lot of what Serge Callier talks about, and they also had their own experience of these rites and deep truth that they were experiencing through the rites of their faith, of Judeo-Christian faith. Also talks about in the General Statutes that they wanted everyone to be strong Catholics. Now, I don't particularly like that. I don't have a thing against Catholicism. What I have a thing against is the doctrine of Catholicism and how it orders individuals to think a certain way. I don't know if Martinez's goal was to reconstruct the catechisms of Catholicism, or if the catechumens were already in it and this was like a reparation of the Catholic kind of impetus or whatever, that they were trying to help Catholics not only become better Catholics, but to understand the foundation of their own faith. So it's pretty cool if you get, like I said, if you get the catechisms, you'll see that we have all of them. They have the Baylot, the 4123, and originally, something that is interesting to know, the free catechisms that are on academia.edu, I won't go much into this, but they were originally, when this group started, only available to the highest degree of the order. So a lot has happened in trying to make this information public and trying to make it helpful to people, and also in trying to get the word out there that this was not a group of charlatans. Like Cagliostro is called a charlatan by a lot of people. They're like, oh yeah, he was a huckster, he was a con man, he went into people's pockets and he stole all kinds of stuff. And you'll see that Cagliostro was a little bit more than people wanted to admit he was. Not in the sense that he wasn't human. He was absolutely human, but he was a special kind of human. He was like a reintegrated kind of human. The same with Martinez. Martinez came to France, or was born around that area. We know it's Spain. We can go into that when we talk about Michel Nahon's book, which is really big. But Martinez came to the French Lodge in Toulouse, and he shared the Elus Coen. He was like, all right, bros, we're going to go through this, and I'm going to share this with you. And immediately, for whatever reason, the high-ranking officials in Toulouse were like, no, we don't want you to ever talk about this. You are an imposter. This is apostasy to Masonry. There's no possible way that you can speak like this. Off with your head kind of thing. And he was like, whoa, 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 I just initiated you into the Elus Coen. Like, what's your problem? And they were like, no, you are no longer. And he went through the Order of the Royal Secret at that time. He went through like 20 grades in 5 years. He was an extremely devout Catholic, and he was an extremely devout Mason. He was very well educated in Masonic history, and he did what needed to be done to perpetuate the rites of the Elus Coen. So they didn't like him. They were like, if you show your face around here, we're going to kick you out of Masonry completely. So you know what Martinez did? This guy developed the system to an extent that he was supported by a brand new Grand Lodge of France. The France Lodge, I believe, was in Paris, and they had high-ranking officials that came to the Elus Coen ceremonies and activities, and they weren't allowed in. Like, that's how serious this guy's work was. That the highest people, who thought they had clout and all kinds of accolades and maybe even education and a very good comparative understanding of masonry, were not allowed to witness the rites of the Elus Coen. that is just amazing that it was kept that sovereign, and that Martinez wasn't messing around. He was not out there saying, I'll give you this if you give me money. He was not like anybody can join, and he definitely wasn't going to integrate this into what they called apocryphal masonry. So, this is what it is. But anyway, 4123 was only available to the high ranking, what they call SI, Superior Inconnu, of the Martinist order that published these. That's a fact. So they got made available. So then what happened is, with that effort of making them available, we got all this other stuff. We got the Baylot, we got the coat, we got tons and tons of bibliotech catechisms. And so the important part about this is that these are highly talked about in a brief overview in Saint Martin's 10 instructions. I know it sounds like a lot of study, and it is. I mean, this was not something that you could just walk into and go, razzle dazzle, I'm now a, Elus Coen Mason of the universe, and I'm going to go and ordain other people because, like Scottish Rite, where they were making, I think they were called inspector generals, who were going around and they were changing and developing out of their own sovereignty, their own degrees. They were making more degrees and more degrees. And finally, they had capitation that they were paying for making all these degrees. And though they're a really spectacular system, at first, it was actually the order that was developed in order to make money. They were charging for these brand new teachings, and they were making money. They were running around, and they had authority by Franken and all of that. And you could read about the Order of Royal Secret and where Scottish Rite comes from. All of that. De Hoyos has stuff out there. You could read it. But the point is that that kind of interpretation or theory actually stands a lot more for the Scottish Rite. If we were to do apples to apples comparison, than the Elus Coen. And you can take that one to the bank. Go watch Brent Morris's, who, not me, he knows his stuff. He talks about how this is exactly the fact, followed by De Hoyos, and that Pike was communicated these degrees by Mackey and then given a bunch of documents that were put together and put into a big book and blah blah blah, on and on and on. I mean, there's a lot of history there. The point is that it was an evolving system. It was not what the Order of the Royal Secret originally was, which you'll need to go buy that book to understand, and maybe read a little bit and listen to a little bit of Arturo de Hoyos's lectures. But back to Martinez, he was not doing that. He wasn't like, yeah, I want your money. In fact, one of the main things is that you have to have a pure, dedicated disposition to be an Elus Coen. They did not just want anybody. It was not open to just any old Mason who decided, I want to practice a form of priestly mysticism, and on and on and on. You couldn't get in. In fact, the only way you could get in is if you were invited. And you were only invited if you met these qualifications that Serge Callier talks about. So it is very elect. It is an elitist kind of group. Now, I know there's a lot of talk out there about elitism and how we need to have an open mystery school, and that is available for people to initially get into through Rosicrucianism. But you can't necessarily just say that with that you're going to be the most enlightened and evolved individual, and all your needs will be met. In fact, history shows that the betterment of the individual doesn't necessarily lead to the betterment of society. And that's what Masonry was all about at that time, for sure. They were about building a better community, building a better society, building a better foundation where people could get relief, they could find truth, and they could experience this brotherly and even sisterly, with the Elus Coen, communion and companionship, because that wasn't available in the exploitive world that Martinez came from. So, back to the book. We're at 20 minutes. I think we'll go to like a half an hour and then I'll stop blabbing around. They talk about a lot of the things that are done that have a very big significance in the doctrine of the Elus Coen. Something is done to you in the first degree. It's kind of like the Golden Dawn, where they say, the neophyte experiences everything that the adept has to offer. They just don't have the understanding of how to really put it together and know what's going on. It's kind of like you're going to a fun house and everything is upside down and you're like, what's happening here, and trying to make sense of what you're seeing, but you're intentionally being not misled, but you're intentionally not being disclosed to, so you can have an experience of what this order had. So in it, they do some things, they say some words. If you've heard any of my other lectures, Dr. Kaiser gave me a very good way to understand mystery schools. In them, there's three things. You have the ta legamina, which comes from the Greek, which is the things that are said. Those are the ritual words that are spoken, and there's an entire purpose behind them. They're not just blank nothing burgers that are said in order to get people to become like devotees. The next one is ta dromina, the things that are done. There are certain actions that are done in every mystery rite that bring potency and vitality to the degree, to the process that you're going through. There's that. Then there's ta duknamana. The duknamana is the things that are revealed. This is a categorization that scholars have used to study the Eleusinian mysteries, the Bacchic mysteries, Mithraic, on and on and on. This is a very strong way of classifying what's being done. So, with that being said, the Ta Duknamana is not very easy to find in the Elus Coen. If you're going to the Elus Coen to find the Duknamana, the revelatory experiences, they're there, but you have to go through it and do it. And that's the genius of Martinez. He wasn't just making something that was super easy to grasp. It was a brand new language. It was a brand new lexicon. It was a brand new experience that individuals who were highly educated, I won't say arrogant, but they were really certain about their levels of education. They had to come in brand new. They didn't know anything about this particular system. It was not comparable to what they had already gone through. So it's pretty phenomenal stuff what Martinez was doing. This is why he was a #1 psychopomp, and he had over 100 people that joined the order, even though it was very taboo. You weren't supposed to be in it. It was actually considered. He considered regular French high degree masonry apocryphal at that time. Now there were some overlaps, but highly apocryphal to do the normal masonry and even ultra masonic stuff. He considered Elus Coens the real masons of the universe, and even all of the orders and the Grand Lodges and everything. So it goes to show that they weren't in competition, but they definitely were offering something comparable to Masons who had the willingness to go through the process. So the theosophy of these degrees is highly talked about throughout the 10 instructions and through the Lessons of Leon. You're probably going to get no other open and available books, and even as far as like closed order books, those are some of the highest quality theosophic stuff that you can get. The actions that were done are highly secret in the Elus Coen. Serge Callier goes over some, and I purposefully am not like reading all of them to everyone in case somebody goes and experiences this thing. You don't want to have like spoiler alert, like you don't want to be told what the movie is before you see it. Because there is some deichnumena that happens in allowing your understanding to develop and finding a way to express this thing, you know. But it's so profound that we have these documents. So anyway, as you go through this process, the master says some stuff to you. You're given a whole like kind of birth into the Elus Coen. That's what this degree is supposed to be. They talk about it's the beginning of the blue grades, the blue band, and they called it band because you wore like a sash over you. But it's the beginning of the blue band, and this is the birthing band. Uh, you're gonna learn things that you may know, but that you haven't really been able to vocalize in this degree. So it's powerful stuff, and it's setting the foundation for you to, after you're born, to walk as a new person, and then other things happen. And what's called there's the first, the second, and the third. Those are the apprentice, the symbolic apprentice, the symbolic companion, and the symbolic master. And then you have the fourth, which is the Maitre Elu. That's the minor Elu grade, and it has a black class that's completely composed of that grade. Then that kind of repeats itself in the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh degree, which is then, you guessed it, the Apprentice Coen, the Companion Coen, and the Master Coen. Then there's a capping grade over that, and this is the red band, but there's a capping grade over that, which is the Grand Architect. Then you have higher and higher grades and bands that really no one is pretty much fleshed out. I mean, they kind of know what it is. You'll read in the Green Book a little bit of stuff. I mean, the Livre Vert, it's the Green Book that was used for people who were in high grades. But see, you have to have all of this understanding to be able to utilize something like that. You can't just pick up the Green Book. No offense to anybody, but you can't just pick it up and all of a sudden say that you're the highest degree Elus Coen in the world. It's not going to happen. First, you haven't had the special ordinations that Martinez intended for all blue grades to have. Secondly, you haven't had the purifications. You haven't had access and experience with the cults that Martinez, not like creepy brainwash cults. This is what he called the operations that the Elus Coen did. They were cults. There was the cult of expiation. There was the cult of reconciliation. There was the cult of worship. There was like a cult of worshiping the divine. There were four of them, and then there's other stuff too. So this is talked about in the Lessons of Leon. And when you read Reintegrations of Being, you see that this wasn't just material that they were like, okay, now you have a syllabus so you can understand. It was an amplification of what you already went through in the blue, the black, and the red band. This wasn't just something that you pick up and you say, okay, now I want to learn Elus Coen. It was a gradual process. Dr. Kaiser told me that the gradual process was how all initiatic societies really worked, is that you gradually expand your mind through each initiation. You get new information and you rebalance that information until finally you take that rebalanced individual into another initiation. So it's like leveling up. You can't go into God mode in your favorite video game without actually learning the controls and how to do the proper movement in the game. You're not going to be able to do it. I don't care how great you think you are, you're not going to be able to use the green book without going through the blue band. So anyway, this is the beginning and introduction to the Elus Coen reintegration of mind. Thanks for listening.